So in the previous two videos, we've been talking about classes. It's now time to continue and talk about constructors, which are an important part of using classes. But before we do that, it's challenge time. I'm going to challenge your understanding of the previous two videos. So here's what I want you to do. Okay, so the challenge is to create a new class which is going to be used for a bank account. So the fields for the class will be the account number, the balance, in other words, how much money is in the account, the customer name, the email address, and the phone number. So you want to also create getters and setters for each field, and in addition, create two additional methods for this class. The first method should allow the customer to deposit funds. So that method should then increment the balance field with the amount, but also should allow the customer to withdraw funds with another method, and that method should deduct from the balance field, but also not allow the withdrawal to complete if there are insufficient funds. And I think I spelled there wrong there. And what you want to do is also create various code in the main class. I'm talking about the one created initially by IntelliJ, just to confirm that your code is working. And you may also want to add some system.out.print lines to the two methods above as well to confirm how much was deposited or withdrawn. So pause the video and try that out, and when you're ready to see my solution, come back and we'll go through it. Okay, how did you get on? Did you figure it out? Let me show you my solution. So what we're going to do is create firstly a new class. I'm going to go into my package as before and select new, and I'm just going to call this Java class account. Now we also need some fields. So we need the account number. That's going to be, I'm going to call that user string, but you could use a number if you wanted to. And we also need the balance. So I'm going to use a double for the balance. And we'll put account balance. And the customer's name. Email address. And their phone number are all going to be strings. And probably there, I'll get the name right, I'm just going to actually put balance and number. You could use either, but because we're already using, because the class name is called account, we can assume that we know that it's based on an account. So therefore, when we're creating a field called number, it's for the account class. So we don't really need to put the word account there in twice. Okay, so next, create getters and setters. Now I'm going to show you a trick to quickly create getters and setters using IntelliJ. Because it's such a common thing that you do regularly, there's a way to automate that, and that's to go into the code menu and click on generate, or you can see on my computer, Command N does the same thing. So click on generate, and you can click on either getter or setter, or getter and setter. So I'm going to click on both. Then you need to select which fields you want. So you can select one or more, and you can see the F indicates that these are private fields, and the F of course is fields. Click on OK. Once I do that, IntelliJ creates all the code for us. How nice is that? Saves you a lot of typing, a heck of a lot of typing. So that's a pretty cool way to very quickly get getters and setters created. So make sure you check that out. We'll be referring to that for other types of code generation later. So that's all our getters and setters created. Next, we need to create two methods, a deposit and a withdrawal. So we're going to start off by creating the one for the deposit. So it's going to be a void method. So it's public void deposit. And I'm going to pass the parameter of the deposit amount. And then to add to the balance, we wouldn't want to do balance equals deposit amount. That's going to replace the amount that's currently set for the balance. What we want to do is add to the balance by using the plus equal operator. So that will then add to that balance. And for clarification, we could use this to make sure that this is the field that we're updating. So that's the deposit function. And for the withdrawal one, we'll do public void withdrawal. And we're also going to find the amount. and we're going to pass the amount that we want to withdraw. So we'll put withdrawal. So what we can do now is test to see whether there is sufficient funds available to process the withdrawal. So the easiest way to do that would be to put if balance, the current balance in the bank account minus the amount that we want to withdraw. If the balance of those two is less than or equal to 0, that means they haven't got enough money. So we're going to print out a message. We'll put only balance available, withdrawal not processed. Else, so what's happened in this case is we were able to process it. We're going to put balance minus equals withdrawal amount. So we're going to deduct the withdrawal amount from the balance, and we're going to put withdrawal amount processed, remaining balance equals balance. So that's it, that's the withdrawal method. And here we might just put deposit amount made, new balance is plus balance. And to be consistent, I should really be putting this dot. Obviously it hasn't got a problem because the parameter that we're passing isn't the same name, but one thing I'd like to tell you to do is to try and be consistent with your naming and your code. So it's good to, if you're going to do it sometimes, you should be actually doing it all the time. So in this case, I'm going to use this dot when referring to fields in our classes. Okay, so that's our functionality for our account class. We've now written everything, and we've got our deposit and withdrawal functions working. So what we now need to do is go back to our main class and test that this is working. So what we're going to do is go there, and we're going to create a new one first. We're going to call it account, Bob's account equals new account. And we're going to do a test first. I'm going to put Bob's account dot withdraw 100. Let's try running that and see what happens. Only 0.0 available, withdrawal not processed. So that's good. It's doing what it should be doing. So that's good. Next we'll do a Bob's account dot deposit. Let's deposit $50. And then we'll try and do the same withdrawal again, and that should still fail, but it should give us a different balance. Let's try running that. Only 50.0 available, withdrawal not processed. That's good. So now we type Bob's account. Let's do another deposit of $51, and we'll do a Bob's account dot withdrawal from 100, which should now succeed because we've got $101 at this point, so we should have a remaining balance of $1. Let's run that. Deposit of $51 made, new balance is 101. Withdrawal of $100 processed, remaining balance is $1, 1.0. So that's it, that's the challenge. Hopefully you got something along those lines. And you've now really created your own class for the first time, which is fantastic. Now, of course, we didn't actually set any other values there. What we could have, if we wanted to set the other values, what we would have had to done is something like Bob's account dot set number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for argument's sake for the account number. Now, Bob's account dot set initial balance of 0. Bob's account dot set customer name Bob Brown. Bob's account dot set customer email address, my email at bob.com, and Bob's account dot set phone number 087 123 4567. So you can see there's lots of typing there if we wanted to set all those variables to set the field values for the first time. And if you imagine if you had 10 or 20 or 30 fields, it could be quite a bit of code to actually do that. But there is another way of doing this when you're creating an object for the first time using a class, and that's using constructors. So what you can do with a constructor is you can essentially do all these commands here to set the initial parameters or the initial values of the fields and any other initialization you want to perform in the one hit using a constructor. So let's see whether we can replace this by editing our account.java and adding a constructor. Well, firstly, it turns out that a constructor is actually created for you automatically by Java. And when you actually type new and then the name of the class and in brackets, this is actually calling the constructor. So this is actually calling that special method that creates the class. So its purpose is to physically create the object from the class for us. So I'm going to go into our account class and we're going to create our own constructor. So what we're going to do is do a public, and you have to type the actual name, the exact name of the class. Notice how I didn't put a void or a type there, a return type. A constructor is something special. It has only the access modifier and the name of the class, and then also the number of parameters like so. So what I'm going to do just to show that this is working, I'm going to put empty constructor called. So I've done nothing else there. I've created the constructor. This is normally created for you automatically, but what I've done is I've physically typed it in. So what will happen is when we go to compile this Java, we'll look at that and go, oh, okay, you're creating your own constructor. I won't try and overwrite it. So if we run this now, what we should see at the top is that message that I've just added. You can see here at the top now, empty constructor called. So when we type a new account with brackets with no parameters, that actually executed this constructor for us automatically. So that's what the purpose of the constructor is for you to essentially initialize the object that you're creating and do whatever else you want to do at the time that object is being created. So it's only ever called once at the start when we're creating the object. So let's add another constructor and set some parameters up so we can set these values in the constructor instead of using the setters. So to do that, you come back here and we can create another constructor. Because like methods, constructors can be overloaded. We can have more than one constructor provided we change the number of parameters. So I'm going to change the number of parameters. I'm going to go with public account. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to initialize the number. So I'm going to put string number double balance string customer. You notice IntelliJ is trying to help us now. It's going, okay, clearly you're creating a constructor. Which fields do you want to be included as parameters in this constructor? So it's quite handy. So we're going to specify all of them. So string customer email address and string, we're on to the next line, customer phone number. Then what we do is we just do this. You've seen this before with a setter. This dot number equals number. This dot balance equals balance. This dot customer name equals customer name. This dot customer email address equals customer email address, and this dot customer phone number equals customer phone number. So that's now setting the field values in the constructor. But what we now need to do is call that constructor when we're creating the object. So to call the constructor, what we do is instead of having no parameters, we pass parameters like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0.00, Bob Brown, my email at bob.com, and 087 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we close off the bracket and we fix the typo I've made there. I forgot a quote by the looks of it. Okay, so that's the line now. Now that we've done that, these are now redundant. We don't need to do that because the constructor has done that for us. And just to confirm that that works, we can go back here and we can put count constructor with parameters called. If we try and run that now, account constructor with parameters called, because we've specified new account and then the parameters, and the values have been automatically updated in the constructor. And we can confirm that by just typing a few out. We can do Bob's account dot get number Bob's account, get balance. Let's just do those two and run that. And we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 0.00. So they were actually updated by the constructor. Now I mentioned before that constructors can be overloaded, so we can have more than one. But the other thing, so in line with that, what we can do is we can call one constructor from another constructor. Now that sounds a little bit confusing, but the idea of that would be, if let's say that if an empty constructor is called, in other words, one without any parameters, perhaps we want to create the object with some default values. So what do I mean by that? So in this scenario, what we could do is we could say, okay, if the empty constructor is called, we want to actually call the constructor with all these parameters, and we want to issue some default values for the 5 fields. So to do that, we type this. This is a special case of the word this, and we type brackets, and we pass our parameters. So we might put 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the balance, $2.50. Customer name, default name, default address, default phone. So what we're doing there with this is a special use of this which you won't see anywhere else. This is calling another constructor within a constructor. So what we're saying here is, look, if you try and create an object from this class and you don't give me any parameters, these are the parameters that I'm going to use when creating this object. This is optional. It's not something you have to do, but there can be situations where you want to do that, when you want to make sure that the class is created with all the fields set, and you could issue some default constructors to do that. And one other thing to keep in mind is with using this to call another constructor, is what you need to do is make sure that's the very first line that's executed. So in other words, we couldn't paste in the system.out.println line there as the first line in the constructor, because it's going to actually come up and say, the call to this must be the first statement in constructor body. So this is just constructors we're talking about. It has to be the very first line that's called. I'm going to set that back. So we'll go back to our main class and run it again. Now it's doing exactly the same as you can see, but let's change that now. And we'll set it to new account, and I'll just comment out the rest. So empty again, like so, and we'll just comment out the next line as well. Now if we run it using the empty constructor, we should actually get the right values from our default constructor. And you can see what's happened here. The account constructor with parameters was called, and the empty constructor was called. So they were actually both called, as you can see there. The reason for that, the reason why you see it in that order, of course, makes sense. If you come back here to the account.java, the very first line of the account constructor called the other constructor. It was only after that was finished that we actually printed this out. So you can see that what happened was the default constructor, the empty constructor, was called first. Its first line called the other one, which then printed out that message. So if you're looking at that and thinking, well, why is the account constructor with parameters called first? It wasn't actually called first, it's just displayed that way with our messages. So as you can see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 2.5 was actually passed. So it's obviously working, the default constructor was working. All right, I'm going to pause the video here and let's come back in the next video and finish off our discussion about constructors.